Biggest hot take for the Minnesota Vikings has to do with Justin Jefferson and Randy Moss. It's a really interesting one. The Minnesota Vikings are going into the 2025 season, and it's all surrounding JJ McCarthy, which of course it is. He's a first-year starter. The Minnesota Vikings haven't had consistency at the quarterback position, arguably since Fran Tarkenton. Yeah, we can talk about Kirk Cousins, but the entire fan base seemingly wanted to replace him every single year. And Dante Culpepper, who, while he was my pick to be on the quarter-century team at the position and nearly had an MVP season in 2004 if it weren't for Peyton Manning's 49 touchdown passes, he had a lot of detractors himself. And then shredded knee in November of 2005 ended up cratering his career. But the one thing we don't have any questions about is Justin Jefferson, and that's where the discussion comes today. Kyle Krabs and Destin Adams here at A to Z Sports did hot takes for each team in the NFC North, and how they broke down the Vikings was interesting. They gave it to Krabs, and his theory was that Justin Jefferson would pass Randy Moss for second place all time in Vikings receiving yards. And it's interesting. And here's kind of how he breaks it down. Randy Moss finished his career with 9,316 yards before continuing his career elsewhere. Took him 113 games to get there. Hear me out. Justin Jefferson has played in 77 career games in Minnesota, but is less than 2,000 yards behind Moss on the Vikings all-time list. Jefferson, who has 7,432 receiving yards, needs 203 to move past Anthony Carter for third place on the all-time list. That's one good day at the office for Jefferson. Jefferson needs 1,885 yards to pass Moss for second place in Vikings history. He nearly did that in 2022 despite posting just 5 receptions for 53 yards across Minnesota's final 2 games of that season. And what's really interesting about the Minnesota Vikings and Justin Jefferson is, well, he is the number 1 receiver all time in receiving yards per game at 96.5. Second place is 9 yards behind him, and that's Jamar Chase at 87.5. Now, could that end up changing over the course of the next year? Sure. But with Sam Darnold at the helm for the Vikings and a very diverse pass catching group, Jefferson still averaged over 90 yards per game. And in 2022, when he won Offensive Player of the Year, 106 yards per game. 2023, when he missed 7 games, Jefferson still averaged 107 yards per reception. And that's going to be the key here, because half of those games were the Kirk Cousins. The other half were a mismatch of Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, and Jaron Hall. No matter who is throwing him the football, it does not matter. Jefferson produces, and he does so at a very high level. So when it comes to breaking the record, he will have to break his own record of receiving yards in a season. But we've been talking for a couple years about how Jefferson might be able to hit 2,000 yards. And with a guy like McCarthy needing to lean on somebody right away, that guy could be Jefferson. And you know what? There are going to be a couple games a year where he just doesn't do much because they just sell out to stop him and be like, all right, beat us with the likes of Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Jalen Naylor, Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason. We're not letting Jefferson do it. They're going to be those games. Hell, there was one game against the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field where they sold out, and Hawkinson, Addison, and Aaron Jones all had over 100 yards from scrimmage. Even so, the Vikings are going to get Jefferson his. And if he ends up taking off with McCarthy from a chemistry standpoint early and often, he could end up surpassing that. Heck, he could even surpass Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, and Calvin Johnson, 3 of the top receiving yards leaders in a single season, and break that 2,000-yard threshold for the first time ever. Don't be surprised if it happens. Jefferson's already the best per-game receiver of all time, and he's only entering year 6. Is it a hot take? Honestly, it probably shouldn't be, but it still would be a career high, so I suppose you have to call it at least lukewarm. I'm Tyler Forness with A to Z Sports. It's Skol Vikings.